Did you know that the Rocky Mountains stretch for over 3,000 miles across 2 countries, making them one of the longest continuous mountain ranges on the entire planet? Did you know that hidden within their peaks are lakes so high in elevation they sit above the tree line and freeze solid for most of the year? Or that these mountains are home to a single hydrological point where a drop of water can split into 3 different oceans, traveling in completely opposite directions across the continent? Although the Rocky Mountains are often imagined as nothing more than a scenic backdrop for postcards and ski resorts, this massive spine of stone hides some of the strangest stories on the entire continent. Today, you are going to discover 35 Rocky Mountain facts that don't seem real, and by the time we reach the final few, you will see this towering chain of peaks in a way you never have before. Fact 35. The colossal length of the chain. The Rocky Mountains stretch for more than 3,000 miles, beginning in the far northern reaches of British Columbia and extending all the way south into New Mexico. This makes them one of the longest mountain ranges on the planet, rivaling chains like the Andes in their continental scale. The range crosses through multiple climate zones, ecosystems, and even tectonic provinces, changing dramatically in character as you travel from north to south. Despite being called a single range, the Rockies are actually made up of dozens of distinct subranges. And the wild part is that traveling the full length of the Rockies would take you through nearly every type of mountain ecosystem found in North America, from glaciated peaks in the north to dry desert ranges in the south. Fact 34. The Triple Ocean Divide. Hidden on a quiet ridge in Glacier National Park sits a small geographical point known as Triple Divide Peak, one of only a handful of places on the planet where water can flow toward 3 different oceans. A drop of rain falling on one slope eventually reaches the Pacific Ocean, while a drop falling on another slope travels to the Atlantic via the Gulf of Mexico, and a third drop flows north into Hudson Bay and the Arctic. The peak itself is a modest mountain by Rocky standards, and the most surprising thing is that this unassuming summit serves as a hydrological hub for an entire continent, controlling the fate of every drop of water that lands on its rocky slopes. Fact 33. The youngest peaks of an ancient continent. Despite their impressive height, the Rocky Mountains are geologically young compared to many of the world's mountain ranges, having formed only between 50 and 80 million years ago during an event known as the Laramide orogeny. This was the same period when the dinosaurs were nearing the end of their reign on Earth. The mountains were built when the Pacific Plate slid beneath the North American Plate at an unusually shallow angle, crumpling the crust far inland. And the insane part is that the rocks at the core of many Rocky Mountain peaks are billions of years old, meaning the range itself is young, but the stone that makes it up is some of the most ancient material exposed anywhere on the continent. Fact 32. The Continental Divide that splits the country. Running along the highest spine of the Rocky Mountains is the Great Continental Divide, an invisible line that determines whether every drop of water flows toward the Pacific or the Atlantic. This divide twists and turns through hundreds of peaks and passes from Canada to Mexico, sometimes following obvious ridgelines and other times cutting across surprisingly subtle terrain. Towns, trails, and even individual buildings sit directly on the divide, with their roofs splitting rainfall between 2 oceans. And the mind-blowing part is that during certain extreme weather events, water has been known to flow back and forth across the divide as storms shift wind direction, briefly redirecting drops between oceans in a way that seems to defy the entire concept of geographical permanence. Fact 31. The 14ers Club. Scattered across Colorado are over 50 peaks that exceed 14,000 feet in elevation, an exclusive group of mountains known affectionately as the 14ers. Climbing all of them has become a lifelong goal for thousands of dedicated hikers, with some routes requiring serious technical mountaineering skills, while others can be hiked by determined beginners. The highest of these peaks reaches over 14,400 feet at Mount Elbert. And here's the shocking part. Colorado contains more 14ers than every other state in the country combined, making it the undisputed high-altitude capital of the lower 48 and a magnet for mountaineers from around the world. Fact 30. The frozen lakes above the tree line. Hidden in the high cirques and basins of the Rocky Mountains are thousands of alpine lakes that sit above the elevation where trees can survive, leaving them surrounded by nothing but bare rock, snow, and tundra plants. Many of these lakes remain frozen for most of the year, only briefly thawing during the short summer months before refreezing as autumn arrives. The water in these lakes is often so clear and pure that you can see straight to the bottom even at depths of dozens of feet. And the wild part is that some of these alpine lakes contain populations of trout that were carried up by hand in airdrops decades ago, creating thriving fish populations in waters where no fish naturally existed before. Fact 29. The roof of the world along the highway. Cutting through the heart of the Colorado Rockies is one of the highest paved roads in North America, a winding highway that climbs over 12,000 feet above sea level. Drivers on this route experience oxygen levels low enough to cause altitude sickness, dramatic temperature drops even in the middle of summer, and views that stretch across hundreds of miles of jagged peaks. The road crosses over tundra environments that resemble the Arctic far more than the typical American landscape. And the most surprising thing is that this paved road remains open to ordinary passenger vehicles, allowing anyone with a car to experience an environment normally reserved for high-altitude climbers and serious mountaineers. Fact 28. The Hidden Hot Springs Network. Scattered throughout the Rocky Mountains are hundreds of natural hot springs where geothermally heated water bubbles up to the surface, providing pockets of warmth in some of the coldest landscapes on the continent. These springs are fed by water that seeps deep into the Earth's crust, where it is heated by underlying volcanic and tectonic activity before being forced back to the surface. Some are large enough to support entire resort communities, while others remain hidden in remote backcountry locations. And the unbelievable part is that the water in some of these springs emerges at temperatures hot enough to cook food, despite the surrounding terrain being buried in snow and ice for much of the year. Fact 27. The Grizzly Stronghold of the North. The northern Rocky Mountains, particularly within the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, support one of the last large populations of grizzly bears in the lower 48 states. These massive predators once roamed across most of the western half of the continent, but have been pushed into a few mountain strongholds where wild country still remains. The geography of the northern Rockies, with its vast roadless wilderness and abundant food sources, has allowed grizzly populations to slowly recover after near extinction. And the crazy part is that some individual grizzlies in this region have home ranges of over 500 square miles, requiring vast amounts of untouched wilderness to sustain a single animal. Fact 26. The supervolcano beneath Yellowstone. Sitting at the heart of the northern Rocky Mountains is one of the largest active volcanic systems on the planet, hidden beneath the geysers and hot springs of Yellowstone National Park. The Yellowstone caldera is roughly 45 miles long and 30 miles wide, formed by a series of massive eruptions over the last 2 million years. The magma chamber beneath the park contains enough molten rock to fuel an eruption on a scale that would dwarf any volcanic event in recorded human history. And the insane part is that scientists monitor this system around the clock, watching for tiny changes in ground deformation and earthquake activity that could signal the awakening of one of the most dangerous geological features anywhere in the world. Fact 25. The ghost forests of the high country. Walking through certain sections of the Rocky Mountains today reveals vast stretches of standing dead trees, gray skeletal forests that have been killed by an explosion of mountain pine beetles over the last several decades. Warmer winters have allowed the beetles to survive and reproduce at unprecedented rates, devastating millions of acres of lodgepole pine forest across the range. The dead trees remain standing for years before eventually toppling. And the most surprising thing is that this transformation is one of the largest ecological changes happening in North America right now, reshaping the geography of entire mountain ranges almost faster than scientists can document. Fact 24. The Great Sand Dunes of the Southern Rockies. Nestled at the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in southern Colorado is the tallest dune field in North America, with sand piles rising more than 700 feet above the surrounding valley floor. These dunes formed over hundreds of thousands of years as wind blew sand off the floor of an ancient lake and piled it against the mountains, which served as a natural barrier that trapped the moving sediment. The geography of this site is so unusual that snow-covered mountain peaks rise directly behind golden desert dunes in the same view. And the wild part is that beneath the dunes flows a permanent creek that emerges seasonally, creating a temporary beach environment where children can play in the sand and water at over 8,000 feet of elevation. Fact 23. The deepest canyons of the range. Carved Tucked into the heart of the Rocky Mountains are dozens of deep canyons where rivers have cut through ancient bedrock over millions of years, creating dramatic vertical landscapes that rival the famous gorges of the American Southwest. The Black Canyon of the Gunnison reaches depths of over 2,700 feet while remaining narrow enough at the top that sunlight only reaches the bottom for short periods of the day. The rock walls are composed of ancient metamorphic stone nearly 2 billion years old. And the unbelievable part is that the canyon is so deep and narrow that some viewpoints look down on cliff faces that have never been climbed, sections of stone too steep and remote for even modern technical climbers to reach. Fact 22. The disappearing glaciers. The Rocky Mountains were once home to thousands of small alpine glaciers, ancient bodies of ice clinging to the highest peaks and northern slopes. Over the last century, the vast majority of these glaciers have been rapidly shrinking, with many vanishing entirely as the climate continues to warm. Glacier National Park in Montana has lost most of the named glaciers it had when it was first established just over a century ago. And here's the shocking part. Scientists estimate that nearly all of the remaining glaciers in the lower 48 Rockies could disappear within the next several decades, a transformation that would permanently alter the hydrology of an entire mountain system. Fact 21. The bristlecone pines of the high ridges. Clinging to windswept ridges in the southern Rocky Mountains are some of the oldest individual trees on the planet, ancient bristlecone pines that have lived for thousands of years on landscapes too harsh for almost any other plant to survive. These gnarled, twisted trees grow incredibly slowly in the thin soils and extreme conditions of high elevation, producing wood so dense and resin-rich that it resists decay for centuries, even after the tree dies. And the most surprising thing is that the oldest bristlecone pines in the Rockies were already mature when ancient civilizations like the Egyptians were building their first pyramids, making them silent living witnesses to nearly the entire span of recorded human history. Fact 20. The avalanche country of the high passes. Certain regions of the Rocky Mountains experience some of the most active avalanche conditions anywhere on the planet, with massive slides of snow capable of destroying entire forests and burying highways within seconds. The geography of steep slopes combined with heavy winter snowfall creates the perfect conditions for these violent events, which can release tens of thousands of tons of snow at speeds approaching 100 miles per hour. Some mountain passes record dozens of major avalanches every winter, and the wild part is that highway crews use explosives, artillery, and even helicopters to deliberately trigger controlled avalanches before they can release naturally. Fact 19. The mineral wealth beneath the peaks. The Rocky Mountains have produced an extraordinary amount of mineral wealth over the last 2 centuries, including massive deposits of gold, silver, copper, molybdenum, and rare earth elements. The geological forces that built the mountains also concentrated minerals from deep within the earth, creating ore bodies that have been mined for generations. Entire towns sprang up around significant strikes, with some growing into major cities, while others vanished entirely once the easy deposits were exhausted. And the unbelievable part is that some of the richest mining districts in the world sit at elevations above 10,000 feet, where miners had to work in conditions of severe cold, low oxygen, and constant avalanche danger to pull staggering fortunes out of the frozen ground. Fact 18. The Royal Gorge Bridge, spanning a narrow canyon in southern Colorado, is one of the highest suspension bridges in North America, hanging nearly 1,000 feet above the Arkansas River below. The gorge itself was carved by the river over millions of years, cutting through ancient granite to create a vertical chasm that drops dramatically into the heart of the mountain. The bridge offers views straight down to the rushing water, with the steep canyon walls rising on both sides like polished stone curtains. And the crazy part is that for nearly a century after its construction, this bridge held the record as the highest in the world, a title it surrendered only when newer engineering feats elsewhere finally surpassed its dramatic span. Fact 17. The wildlife corridors of the range. Stretching the entire length of the Rocky Mountains is one of the most important wildlife migration corridors on the continent, allowing animals like elk, mule deer, pronghorn, and grizzly bears to move between seasonal ranges across hundreds of miles. These ancient routes have been used by wildlife wildlife for thousands of years, following the contours of valleys, passes, and mountain saddles. Modern highways and development have fragmented many of these corridors, and the most surprising thing is that some pronghorn herds in the northern Rockies still complete annual migrations of over 150 miles, one of the longest land mammal migrations remaining in North America. Fact 16. The high-altitude marmots. Living above the tree line throughout the Rocky Mountains are large rodents known as yellow-bellied marmots, the alpine cousins of groundhogs. These animals have adapted to life at extreme elevations by hibernating for up to 8 months of every year, essentially shutting down their bodies during the brutal mountain winters. They emerge in spring weighing dramatically less than when they entered hibernation, then spend the short summer fattening up for the next long sleep. And the wild part is that marmot colonies often establish themselves on rocky outcroppings near hiking trails, where they sometimes chew through brake lines and rubber components on parked cars to access salt. Fact 15. The mountain weather extremes. The Rocky Mountains generate some of the most violent and unpredictable weather conditions in North America, with afternoon thunderstorms forming almost daily during the summer months and blizzards capable of dropping several feet of snow in a single night, even during traditionally warm seasons. The combination of high elevation, complex topography, and atmospheric instability creates an environment where weather can change from sunny to dangerous within minutes. And here's the shocking part. Some peaks in the range record over 100 days of lightning activity every year, making them among the most electrically charged locations on the continent. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. And now, let's keep discovering the unreal facts hidden across the Rocky Mountains. Fact 14. The thermal terraces of Mammoth. In the northern Rocky Mountains, a series of unusual geological formations called the Mammoth Hot Springs Terraces have been built up over thousands of years by hot mineral water depositing layer after layer of soft limestone. These cascading white and orange formations look more like an alien landscape than anything natural on Earth, with steaming pools tiered above one another in elaborate stone steps. And the unbelievable part is that the entire terrace complex can shift dramatically over just a few years, with active vents drying up while new ones break out elsewhere, meaning the landscape you see today may look completely different within a single human generation. Fact 13. The Cirque amphitheaters of the high country. Carved into the highest peaks of the Rocky Mountains are massive bowl-shaped basins known as cirques, formed by glaciers that once filled these high valleys and slowly ground the rock into curved walls. When the glaciers melted at the end of the last ice age, they left behind dramatic stone amphitheaters often hundreds of feet deep. And the most surprising thing is that some Rocky Mountain cirques are so perfectly shaped that they look almost artificially constructed, with symmetrical curving walls that demonstrate just how systematically glaciers reshape the highest mountain terrain. Fact 12. The ski country snow factories. Certain locations within the Rocky Mountains receive some of the heaviest snowfall anywhere on the planet, with annual totals regularly exceeding 400 inches in particular mountain valleys. The geography of these zones creates a perfect storm of moisture capture, with prevailing winds forced upward against mountain faces where the air cools rapidly and dumps its water as snow. And the wild part is that some Rocky Mountain ski resorts have recorded individual storms dropping over 5 feet of snow within 24 hours, accumulations large enough to bury cars completely and trap entire towns until plows can dig them out. Fact 11. The disappearing rivers underground. Throughout certain limestone-rich sections of the Rocky Mountains, entire streams and small rivers disappear into the ground through sinkholes and cave openings, traveling for miles underground before re-emerging at distant springs. This karst topography creates a hidden plumbing system beneath the surface that is largely invisible to anyone walking the mountains above. And the insane part is that water entering these underground systems can take weeks or even months to reappear at the surface, making it nearly impossible to trace the exact path without the use of fluorescent dye markers and sophisticated monitoring equipment placed deep within the mountain caves. Fact 10. The Pikas of the Alpine boulder fields. Living in the rocky talus slopes high above the tree line throughout the Rocky Mountains are tiny rodent-like mammals known as Pikas, distantly related to rabbits but adapted to an extreme cold environment. Unlike marmots, Pikas do not hibernate, instead spending the entire summer gathering and drying piles of grass and wildflowers to eat during the long mountain winter. They are so sensitive to heat that even brief exposure to warm temperatures can be fatal. And the most surprising surprising thing is that climate change is now pushing Pikas higher and higher up the mountains as the lower elevations become too warm for them to survive. Fact 9. The avalanche lilies of the snowmelt. As the deep snowpack melts in late spring across the Rocky Mountains, a remarkable phenomenon occurs where entire hillsides erupt almost overnight with the white blooms of avalanche lilies, flowers that have been waiting beneath the snow for nearly the entire year. These plants store energy in their underground bulbs and time their bloom to coincide exactly with the retreating snowline. And the wild part is that hikers walking through the high country at the right time of year can witness fields of these flowers blooming literally at the edge of melting snowfields, an explosion of life in a landscape that was buried in ice just days earlier. Fact 8. The Continental Ice Age sculptors. The current shape of the Rocky Mountains owes much of its dramatic character to the work of massive glaciers that covered large portions of the range during the last ice age. These rivers of ice carved out U-shaped valleys, sharpened mountain ridges into knife-edged arêtes, and ground entire peaks down to bare rock over the course of hundreds of thousands of years. And the unbelievable part is that some of the deepest U-shaped valleys in the northern Rockies were carved by glaciers over 3,000 feet thick, masses of ice large enough to completely bury entire modern cities while sculpting the mountains around them. Fact 7. The Aspen superorganism. Throughout the Rocky Mountains, vast groves of golden-leafed aspen trees stretch across hillsides in single-connected colonies where every tree is genetically identical and connected through a shared underground root system. What appears to be a forest of individual trees is actually a single living organism that can cover hundreds of acres and weigh thousands of tons. And the crazy part is that these aspen superorganisms can be tens of thousands of years old, with individual stems dying and being replaced while the underlying genetic individual continues to live and grow, predating most known human civilizations by enormous spans of time. Fact 6. The mountain goats of the impossible cliffs. Inhabiting the steepest cliffs and most vertical terrain throughout the Rocky Mountains are mountain goats, agile climbers that scale rock faces so steep that no other large mammal can follow them. Their specialized hooves have soft pads that grip rough stone and hard outer edges that catch on tiny ledges, allowing them to stand on surfaces less than an inch wide. And the most surprising thing is that mountain goats give birth to their kids on these vertical cliff faces, and the newborns can walk and climb within hours of being born, an evolutionary adaptation to a landscape that punishes any moment of weakness. Fact 5. The Continental Divide Trail. Running the entire length of the Rocky Mountains from the Mexican border to the Canadian border is one of the longest and most demanding hiking trails on the planet, covering over 3,000 miles of rugged backcountry terrain. Through hikers attempting the entire route face high altitude exposure, dangerous wildlife, severe weather, and long stretches without resupply points. And here's the shocking part. Successful through hikers typically take 5 to 6 months to walk the entire trail, climbing a total elevation gain equivalent to summiting Mount Everest more than a dozen times along the way. Fact 4. The mysterious Crystal Mountain. Hidden in the southern Colorado Rockies sits a mountain that ranks among the world's premier locations for rare and large quartz crystals, with some specimens weighing hundreds of pounds and reaching lengths of several feet. These crystals formed deep underground millions of years ago in hot mineral-rich fluids that filled cracks in the surrounding rock, slowly growing into massive geometric formations. And the wild part is that the largest crystals ever found in this region rivaled the size of small refrigerators, geological treasures so impressive that they now reside in major museums and private collections around the world. Fact 3. The peaks that pierce the jet stream. The highest summits of the Rocky Mountains rise tall enough that they sometimes punch directly into the high-altitude jet stream, the river of fast-moving air that circles the planet at altitudes of around 30,000 feet. When this happens, mountaineers near the summit can experience winds exceeding 100 miles per hour, even on otherwise calm days at lower elevations. And the unbelievable part is that climbers on certain Rocky Mountain peaks have reported being unable to stand upright due to the wind speed, having to crawl on hands and knees across exposed ridges in order to reach summits that look perfectly calm from the valleys below. Fact 2. The Hotspot Trail across the continent, i.e. Stretching across the northern Rocky Mountains is a chain of volcanic landscapes that record the movement of the North American plate over a stationary plume of magma deep within the Earth. As the continent has drifted southwestward over the last 17 million years, the hotspot hotspot has remained fixed in place, leaving behind a series of ancient calderas marking the path. The current location of this hotspot sits beneath Yellowstone, and the most surprising thing is that this trail of ancient eruptions allows geologists to literally read the movement of an entire continent in stone, like footprints left across the landscape over geological time. Fact 1. The mountains that never stop moving. The Rocky Mountains might appear permanent and unchanging on a human timescale, but the entire range is actually in a constant state of geological motion. Earthquakes regularly shift sections of the mountains by tiny amounts. Water and ice continue to erode the peaks at measurable rates, and the underlying tectonic plates that built the mountains in the first place have not stopped moving. Some peaks are gradually rising, while others slowly subside, and the whole range is being reshaped even as you read these words. And the most mind-blowing part is that within the lifespan of the human species, these mountains will look noticeably different than they do today, a slow but unstoppable transformation that proves even the most solid features of our planet are ultimately temporary and alive. After exploring these 35 Rocky Mountain facts that don't seem real, which one was your favorite or surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments, and let's see how many of us chose the same number. You can also check out the video on your screen, so step by step we can keep becoming experts on the geography of our amazing country. And before you move on, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like so we can continue learning together. See you in the next video.